I heard the champagne flute hit the marble floor before I heard my brother's fiancée laugh. That sound, crystal shattering into 1,000 pieces on expensive tile, that's the sound that changed everything. Because in the 2 seconds of silence that followed, Madison looked right at me and said, "Oops. I guess some people just aren't meant to hold expensive things." The entire room went quiet. 50 people in tailored suits and cocktail dresses, all standing in my brother's penthouse in downtown Seattle, all staring at me. At my clearance rack dress. At my scuffed flats. At the cheap purse I'd been clutching like a life raft since I walked through the door. My name is Katie, and this is the story of how I let my family humiliate me for years, until the night I finally showed them exactly who they'd been mocking. But to understand that night, you need to understand how I got there. Growing up, my brother Derek was everything. Captain of the lacrosse team. Straight A's without trying. The kind of kid who made our parents beam with pride at every holiday gathering. And me? I was the one they explained away. Katie's more creative, my mom would say, her voice trailing off like creativity was a terminal diagnosis. I wasn't dumb. I graduated high school with honors. But I didn't want to go to Yale like Derek. I didn't want to work in finance. I wanted to study business administration at a state school, and to my family, that was basically announcing I'd given up on life. Derek got a trust fund at 21. I got a lecture about fiscal responsibility and a $200 check for my birthday. If you've ever been the disappointment in your family, go ahead and comment where you're watching from. You're not alone. By the time I was 25, the pattern was set. Derek worked at a prestigious investment firm in Seattle. He drove a BMW. He wore watches that cost more than my rent. And whenever we had family dinners, the conversation revolved entirely around him, his deals, his promotions, his life. I'd started my own thing by then. A small consulting business helping local companies with operational efficiency. It wasn't glamorous. I worked from my apartment, took meetings at coffee shops, and barely broke even most months. But it was mine. My family never asked about it. Not once. Derek met Madison at some charity gala. She worked in marketing at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle, the kind of place that had craft beer on tap and called everyone a team member instead of an employee. She was beautiful. Tall, blonde, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never had a bad photo taken in her life. And from the moment Derek brought her to Sunday dinner, she treated me like I was the help. "Oh, Katie," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Still doing that little side hustle thing?" She'd ask about my situation with a concerned tilt of her head. She'd offer to connect me with entry-level positions at her company, like I was some lost cause who needed saving. And my family? They ate it up. "Madison's just trying to help," my mother would whisper to me in the kitchen. "She sees potential in you." What she saw was someone to look down on. Someone who made her look better by comparison. 6 months after they started dating, Derek proposed. He did it at a private rooftop restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. He'd rented the entire place. There were roses, string lights, a photographer to capture every moment. I found out about it on Instagram. Not from a call. Not from a text. From a photo Madison posted with a ring the size of a small planet and a caption that read, "He asked, I said yes. Can't wait to marry my best friend and join the most amazing family." Ring sparkles. I stared at that post for 20 minutes, sitting alone in my apartment with leftover Chinese food going cold on the counter. 2 hours later, my mother called. Katie, sweetheart, we wanted to tell you in person but things moved so fast. Derek's engaged. Isn't it wonderful? She didn't apologize. Didn't acknowledge that I'd had to learn about my own brother's engagement from social media. Just expected me to be happy. I was invited to the engagement party as an afterthought. The invitation came via email, 3 days before the event. No +1. No request for my input. Just an address and a time. The party was everything I expected. Derek's penthouse was decorated like something from a magazine spread. There was a catering staff, a bartender mixing craft cocktails, a dessert table that looked like a sculpture. I arrived 20 minutes late because I'd sat in my car trying to convince myself to go inside. Madison greeted me at the door in a white dress that probably cost more than my car. Katie. You made it. Oh, that's what you're wearing? She said it loud enough for the people standing nearby to hear. Said it with a little laugh, like I was in on the joke. I looked down at my dress. It was simple, navy blue, from Target. It was the nicest thing I owned that still fit. I didn't realize there was a dress code, I said quietly. There wasn't. You look fine. She touched my arm, and I could see the pity in her eyes. The same look you'd give a stray dog. Come in, come in. There's someone I want you to meet. Madison steered me through the crowd like I was a project. Every introduction came with an explanation. This is Derek's sister, Katie. She's figuring things out. Katie's in between things right now, trying to find her path. Katie does some freelance work. It's very grassroots. Each time, I smiled. Nodded. Pretended the words didn't land like punches. My parents were holding court by the windows, telling stories about Derek's latest success. When I approached, my mother kissed my cheek and immediately turned back to her conversation. My father gave me a pat on the shoulder and said, "Glad you could make it, kiddo," like I'd driven in from another state instead of across town. I grabbed a glass of wine and found a corner. That's when Madison's mother, Barbara, found me. You must be so proud of your brother, she said, smiling in that way rich women do when they're making a point. Madison says you're still trying to get your business off the ground? It's actually doing well, I said. I've been expanding. That's wonderful. You know, Madison's company is always looking for go-getters. I could put in a word if you're interested in something more stable. If you've ever had someone offer to save you from a life you didn't ask to be saved from, hit that like button. You'll want to hear what happens next. I thanked her and excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the door, stared at myself in the mirror, and practiced smiling until my face hurt. I should have left. Looking back, I should have grabbed my coat and walked out right then. But I stayed. Because Derek was my brother. Because some part of me still wanted to be part of this family, even if they'd never made room for me. I stayed through dinner, where I was seated at the far end of the table, wedged between Madison's teenage cousin and a chair that was just for coats. I stayed through the toasts, where my father gave a 20-minute speech about Derek's accomplishments and made exactly one reference to me, and of course, we're so glad Katie could be here tonight. That was it. 30 years of being his daughter, and I got 8 words. Then came the champagne toast. Madison handed out crystal flutes to everyone in the room. When she got to me, she held it out, then pulled it back slightly. Actually, let me get you something different. I'd hate for you to break one of these. They're baccarat. Someone laughed. I'm not sure who. But someone did. She handed me a regular wine glass instead. Different from everyone else's. Cheaper. A visual marker that I didn't belong. I took it. Said thank you. And felt something inside me crack. That's when Derek clinked his glass and announced that he and Madison had news. They'd found a venue, a historic estate in the San Juan Islands. They'd set a date, June, 8 months away. And they wanted everyone's help making it perfect. Except you'll probably be too busy with work, Madison said, looking directly at me with that smile. We know how hard you're working on your little projects. The room laughed. Like it was a joke. Like I was a joke. And then I picked up my wine glass, and my hand was shaking, and the glass slipped. It shattered on the marble floor. Red wine spread across the white tile like blood. And Madison said, "Oops. I guess some people just aren't meant to hold expensive things." I left without saying goodbye. I grabbed my coat from the chair next to me and walked out while people were still laughing. Derek called after me, "Katie, wait," but I didn't stop. I drove home in silence. No radio. No tears. Just the sound of my own breathing and the streetlights passing overhead. When I got to my apartment, I sat in my car for an hour. And that's when I made the decision. I was done explaining myself. Done apologizing for not being Derek. Done letting Madison and my parents and everyone else treat me like I was worth less because I'd chosen a different path. Because here's what they didn't know. That little consulting business? The one they'd dismissed for years? It wasn't so little anymore. 3 years earlier, I'd incorporated. Not as a sole proprietor, as an LLC. I'd taken on a business partner who specialized in mergers and acquisitions. We'd started buying struggling companies, turning them around, and either selling them or absorbing them into a portfolio. We were quiet about it. No press releases. No flashy office. Just good work and steady growth. 2 years ago, we acquired a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. The kind of place that had been hemorrhaging money due to bad management and no operational oversight. We gutted the leadership, restructured everything, and turned it profitable within 18 months. The company had a new name after the acquisition. New branding. New executive team. But it was mine. Well, 60% mine. And Madison? Madison worked there. So did 3 of her bridesmaids. So did her cousin who'd been at the party. So did Barbara's husband, Madison's father, who'd been at the executive level before we bought the place and had stayed on because he was actually good at his job. None of them knew. The acquisition had been handled through a parent corporation. My name was buried in filings they'd never bothered to read. They had no idea that the company they worked for, the paychecks they deposited, the benefits they bragged about, all of it came from me. Comment below if you saw where this was going. And if you didn't? Keep watching. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I didn't want revenge. Not at first. I wanted them to see me. To understand that I wasn't the failure they'd decided I was. But the more I thought about that night, about Madison's smile, about the laughter, about the cheap wine glass, the more I realized something. They'd never see me. Not unless I made them. So I called my business partner, James. Told him what had happened. Asked him if there was a way to make this right without burning everything down. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "There's a company event coming up. An all-hands meeting where we're announcing next quarter's strategy. You're technically the majority owner. You could present. They don't know who I am, I said. Exactly. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I didn't tell anyone. Not Derek. Not my parents. I showed up to Sunday dinners and smiled through their questions about whether I'd found a real job yet. Madison sent me a Facebook message asking if I wanted to be a bridesmaid after all. We have room if you want to be involved. I thanked her and said I'd love to. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. I told my family I had a work thing and couldn't make dinner that week. I arrived at the company headquarters 30 minutes early. Walked past the reception desk where Madison's friend from college worked. Took the elevator to the 5th floor where the main conference room was. James met me in the hallway. You sure about this? No, I said. But I'm doing it anyway. The room filled up quickly. 200 employees, all sitting in rows of chairs facing a stage with a screen and a podium. Madison was in the 3rd row, laughing at something her coworker was saying. Her father was near the back, checking his phone. Nobody noticed me standing in the side doorway. The lights dimmed. James walked onto the stage. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk about our strategic vision for Q4, but first, I want to introduce you to someone many of you haven't met yet. He gestured toward me. This is Katie Monroe. She's the majority owner of this company and has been since we acquired it 2 years ago. Katie's going to walk us through some exciting changes we're implementing. I watched Madison's face from across the room. Watched the confusion. The slow realization. The color draining from her cheeks. I stepped onto the stage. Hi, everyone, I said, my voice steady. I know this is a surprise. Most of you have never heard my name before, and that's intentional. I've preferred to work behind the scenes while we stabilized operations and rebuilt this company into something sustainable. I clicked to the first slide. A graph showing revenue growth over the past 2 years. When we acquired this company, it was 3 months from bankruptcy. Today, we're profitable, expanding, and positioned for long-term success. That's because of the hard work everyone in this room has done. I paused. Looked directly at Madison. It's also because we've made some hard decisions about leadership, accountability, and the culture we want to build here. I clicked to the next slide. A list of new policies. Expanded benefits. Professional development opportunities. We're investing in the people who've invested in us. We're also going to be more transparent moving forward about who's steering this ship and why. I talked for 20 minutes. Answered questions. Smiled and nodded and played the part of the competent executive I'd become. And the entire time, Madison sat frozen in her seat. When it was over, people clapped. Some came up to shake my hand, thank me for the changes, ask about opportunities for advancement. Madison walked out without a word. If you felt that moment in your chest, tap that like button. And stay with me, we're not done yet. Madison called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, she texted, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. The next morning, Derek showed up at my apartment. He knocked for 5 minutes before I opened the door. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. His face was red. Angry. Embarrassed. "Tell you what? That you own Madison's company. That he couldn't find the words. Successful?" I offered. Wealthy? Not the failure everyone thought I was? He flinched. Katie, that's not fair. Isn't it? I stepped aside to let him in. You never asked about my business, Derek. Not once. Neither did Mom or Dad. You all decided what my life looked like without ever bothering to find out the truth. Madison's humiliated, he said. Her coworkers won't stop talking about it. She didn't know. How could she have known? She could have asked, I said quietly. She could have treated me like a person instead of a project. But she didn't. None of you did. He left 20 minutes later, and I didn't hear from him for 3 days. My mother was next. She called and asked me to come to the house. When I arrived, both my parents were sitting in the living room, looking like I'd committed a crime. Katie, my mother said, we need to talk about what happened at Madison's work. You mean my work, I corrected. My father sighed. Don't be difficult. You embarrassed that girl in front of her entire company. You made Derek look bad. You made us all look bad. I sat down across from them. How? By hiding this, my mother said. By letting us think you were struggling when you were, apparently doing well. I tried to tell you, I said. 100 times. You weren't interested. That's not true, my father said, but even he couldn't make it sound convincing. When was the last time you asked me about my business? I waited. Silence. When was the last time you asked me anything that wasn't about whether I'd found a real job yet? My mother's eyes filled with tears. We just wanted better for you. You wanted me to be Derek, I said. And I'm not. I'm me. And I've built something I'm proud of, but you were all too busy looking down at me to notice. Madison sent me an email a week later. Katie. I owe you an apology. I didn't realize who you were or what you'd accomplished. I made assumptions, and I was wrong. I'm asking you, please don't let what happened at the engagement party affect my job. I know I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to prove I can be better. Madison. I read that email 10 times. Part of me wanted to fire her. To use my position to make her feel as small as she'd made me feel. But I didn't. Because here's what I learned, revenge doesn't fix anything. It just makes you into the person you hated. I responded simply, your job is safe. Your performance will speak for itself. I didn't fire her. I didn't sabotage her. I let her keep working, keep living, keep being part of the company I'd built. But I also didn't go to the wedding. Derek called 3 days before the ceremony. Katie, please. Just come. Madison's sorry. Mom and Dad want you there. I'll think about it, I said. I didn't go. Instead, I spent that Saturday at a conference in Portland, networking with business owners and learning about sustainable growth strategies. I turned off my phone. Didn't check social media. Didn't torture myself with photos of a day I wasn't part of. When I turned my phone back on Sunday morning, I had 47 messages. Most were from my mother. A few from Derek. One from my father that just said, "We missed you yesterday." I didn't respond right away. I sat with those words. We missed you. Not we wish you'd been there. Not you should have come. Just. We missed you. It wasn't enough. But it was something. It's been 6 months since the engagement party. 4 months since the wedding I didn't attend. Derek and I talk now. Not often, but we're trying." He apologized, really apologized, for never asking about my life. For assuming I needed help instead of recognizing I was building something. My parents are slower. They still don't fully understand what I do or why I do it. But my mother called me last week to ask about a business decision, and my father sent me an article about women entrepreneurs with a note, "Thought of you." Small steps. But steps. Madison and I are cordial. We're not friends. We'll never be friends. But she works hard, and I respect that. She doesn't ask me for favors or special treatment, and I don't offer any. We exist in the same space professionally, and that's enough. If you've made it this far, comment what you think you would have done in my situation. And if this story meant something to you, subscribe. There are more stories like this one coming. As for me, I'm still building. Still growing. Still proving, not to them, but to myself, that I made the right choice. Because at the end of the day, success isn't about making people who doubted you feel bad. It's about making yourself proud. Here's what I learned from all of this. You can't force people to see your worth. You can show them, prove them wrong, build empires while they're busy underestimating you, and some of them still won't get it. But that's okay. Because the only person who needs to believe in you is you. I don't need my family's approval anymore. I don't need Madison's respect. I don't need Derek to finally see me as an equal. I have my business. I have my success. I have proof that I was right about myself all along. And some nights, when I'm alone in my apartment with takeout and a good book, I think about that engagement party. About the shattered glass. About Madison's laugh. And I smile. Not because I got revenge. Not because I humiliated anyone. But because I walked out of that room, drove home, and built something they couldn't take away from me. That's the power they never saw coming, not my wealth, not my position, but the fact that I stopped needing them to validate me. So if you're the disappointment in your family, if you're the one they explain away at parties, if you're the one working quietly while everyone else gets the applause, keep going. Your moment will come. And when it does, you won't need to shout it from the rooftops. You'll just need to keep building. If this story hit home, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the best revenge is becoming exactly who you were meant to be.